Just recently in Louisville, Kentucky, which made national headlines, a serial robber who had been convicted and sentenced to 14 years in jail was released after only serving 5 months by a black Democrat judge appointed by a Democrat governor. Go figure. And immediately upon being released, he invaded a home and kidnapped a woman and her 2 children, made her drive to her bank, withdraw all of her money, and then he stabbed her. There's got to be justice, and it might just need to start with the judges and the prosecutor. Welcome back to Jack's Corner, where truth and reality have a seat at the table. Now, that introduction says more than many realize, because in today's world, the truth is suppressed by those who benefit by it and by spreading the lie and canceling your right to speak the truth. So don't wait to be given a seat at the table. You have to take it. With that, let's get into today's topics. Have you noticed how the Democrat left cannot stand peace? But that is not a surprise, because they benefit from chaos. It didn't take long before the Democrats tried to find fault in President Trump's mission to end the war between Ukraine and Russia. Isn't that amazing? They are the reason the war started in the first place. They have no plans to stop it, but criticize Trump over his attempt to do so. Now, there have been over 1 million casualties, and their blood is on the hands of the Democrat left, and they can take credit for it because it was their weakness that invited Russia in to do what it has done. The facts are now bearing that out. Here's another example of just how psychotic and emotionally unstable the Democrat left is, and why they are a danger to your life, liberty, and happiness. Let me predicate this with these facts. President Trump, in his first 8 months in office, has ended 6 wars and is attempting to do the same in Ukraine. This is a war that, by all analysis, was enticed by President Biden and the Democrats because of not just his weakness, which we all saw on TV, but which the whole world saw as well. And don't forget, Russia was watching too. They saw his ineptness and his weakness. But even prior to running for president, Biden was well known in the Senate as having been the most disastrous on foreign policy. His foreign policy record was disastrous, more so than anyone else in Washington, D.C., yet he still got elected. But let's get back to the point of how shrill and dishonest and dangerous the Democrats are. First of all, Eric Swalwell, a representative from California, once again repeated the old worn-out claim that Trump was a Russian asset, which has been now disproven. That's pretty rich, considering that Swalwell was having an adulterous affair with a Chinese spy, yet he is still in office. That says a lot for the people in California, doesn't it? I can't think of anyone who is a worse example of a male gender than Swalwell. In fact, you probably would find more truth in a transgender than you would in Swalwell. You've seen all of his ads of late where he's trying to man up and shift from a beta to an alpha. But that's beside the point. The next person we have is Senator Adam Schiff from California. But of course, he's from California. Does anything good come out of California anymore? Schiff claimed how easy it was for Trump to be manipulated by Putin. See, just trying to undercut and cut the ground out from Trump when he's trying to do a good thing. Schiff is the last one I would ever listen to for any opinions, as he was censored by the House for lying and is now under criminal investigation for mishandling and leaking classified information. And also he is now under investigation for mortgage fraud. Then we have Senator Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut, who said his stomach turned when Trump called Putin a good friend. Well, as most of us already know, when you are in negotiations with an adversary, the last thing you need to start doing is calling each other's names if you want to settle a dispute. Of course, calling names is something that comes natural to the Democrat left because they call everyone names, like Nazis and racists and white supremacists. There is no truth in them. And again, Blumenthal, when he ran for the Senate, lied about serving in Vietnam. He's another pathological liar and fraud, just like Swalwell and Schiff. If ever there was an example why everyone should not have a right to vote, you are seeing the consequences of it in universal suffrage. Just look at the Democrat left, like I have just mentioned. And I might also throw in there and add Mayor Johnson of Chicago and Mayor Bass of Los Angeles. And now the communist who is running for mayor in New York City, Zoran Mandami. They are all a reflection of their constituency. Nevertheless, I don't want to stray too far from the point here, but President Trump is a peace president who is settling conflicts around the world and consequently been nominated several times for the Nobel Peace Prize. He's a president of peace compared to the Democrat left who can only see war as profitable. On Judgment Day, they will not find it so. Now, on to the more radical constituency of the left. The left wants a new constitutional revolution. In a recent New York Times podcast, the host had a guest on by the name Osita Nwanavu. Now, I'm probably slaughtering that name, but I really don't care. And he is a contributing editor at the New Republic, which should be renamed the New Radicals, as there is nothing Republican in anything they do, say, or print. In fact, there is nothing new about them or what they propose. It's the same old demonic ideology and politics that has enslaved and exterminated millions of people over the centuries. It's nothing less than organized crime with an army. The guest's ideas, that's Nwanavu, are not new, and he comes from the same authoritarian group that have been trying to destroy our constitutional republic from the beginning. However, like so many horrendous and disastrous ideas of the past, when they come up with an idea, it should always be taken seriously because that's how bad ideas become reality, like communism and Nazism. It has to be dealt with immediately and discredited and crushed. Nwanavu is suggesting that the left's political strategy needs a more radical approach. Can you imagine that? To address what he considers as an undemocratic system. Here's a red alert. This is linguistic appropriation where the left deceives you with words because they have a different definition for them. But they know that most people think of democracy as freedom, but not so with these radicals. Every communist country in this world considers itself a democracy. Imagine that. Because they know that there's enough stupid people out there to believe it. After all, a slave will not rebel as long as he believes the lie that he's free. That's what the communists do. And this is clearly what Mr. Nwanavu is doing. If things don't go the way an authoritarian wants it to go, and I will remind you, they have many names that they go by, like liberalism, leftists, socialists, and particularly Democrats, all authoritarian in their worldview. If they don't get their way, then they claim it is undemocratic. Now, it's not because they believe in democracy, but they know you do and will fall for their deceit. Only they see themselves as having a legitimate right to rule over others. This is one of the left's psychological markers. It's endemic to them. The summary and thesis of Nwanavu's argument was that the left cannot consistently win until there are radical changes, which essentially means anyone with common sense who is a conservative, Christian, or Republican has to be muzzled and their rights stripped away. Folks, this is a threat to your life, liberty, and happiness. Basically, your life. These are the kind of ideas that will deprive you of your freedoms, and they will murder you. And history proves it. Let's stop this seed before it sprouts, and let's call these people what they are. Mr. Nwanavu claimed that the reason the Democrats lost in 2024 and why our democracy is non-functioning is because the people, get this, the people were more concerned with economic issues, as well they should have been. I've never known a communist that was concerned about the misery of others. Russia exterminated 26 million. China starved out 80 million of its own. Venezuela is in such shambles under its communist dictator that 2 million people have fled the country. And those who have stayed have lost, as studies have shown, an average of about 30 pounds of weight as they are scavenging through garbage dumps for food. Then, of course, we can't leave out North Korea, which is one of the darkest places in the world. And the only way they've been able to survive is not the people, but the government, is because they became a nuclear power, thanks to Bill Clinton. As I have said many times, all of the major catastrophes in the world today are because good people sat back and did nothing, and particularly the West. General Patton wanted to go into Moscow after World War II, and he could have, but was stopped. The Americans could have backed Chiang Kai-shek, who was fighting the communist revolutionary Mao Zedong, but we didn't. And consequently, the democratic opposition failed, and now we have a nuclear China who is the world's greatest enemy. We could have finished off Cuba. Cuba could have been the jewel of the Caribbean. And then we have Venezuela, all because America did not exercise its muscle and the Monroe Doctrine. However, back to the New York Times interview of this anti-human pretend-to-be democratic freedom fighter, Nuwanavu. This is deception at its best. He proposes that we need a new constitution. Well, of course, drafted in such a way that only the ruling elites on both coasts would have any power. He wants D.C. to become a state, which our forefathers did not want, and that's why it was created to be a neutral federal district. As I have proposed in other writings, and want to propose this to some of our elected leaders in D.C., is that the issue with regards to D.C. representation is easily cured. If someone decides to live within the district, then they have to choose and decide and declare whether they are going to vote in Virginia or Maryland elections. D.C. is only 1/10 the size of our smallest state, which is Rhode Island. It's a city. It's not a state. This goofball Nuwanavu wants to make D.C. a state only for the purposes of garnering 2 more radical leftist senators. That's because of the constituency and the makeup of the constituency. And they would gain another representative. He wants to do the same thing with Puerto Rico, which will, based on the demographics there, give his radical left another 2 permanent leftist senators and several representatives. The bottom line is America has a cancerous growth that wants to overturn the Constitution, and they damn near did it under Biden and would have had Kamala Harris won. So what is the takeaway from this interview by the New York Times of this Marxist radical Nuwanavu? He's proposing an idea that is as deadly as was Karl Marx's Communist Manifesto almost 200 years ago, which brought about the greatest number of human deaths at the hands of government in history. Don't just ignore this guy Nuwanavu as the rantings of a madman and dismiss it as such. He and his followers are a deadly cancer, and it will kill Western civilization and the freedoms we enjoy based upon what they're proposing. And that is their intent. Now, inasmuch as we have talked about the left is trying to scuttle Trump's peace initiative to end the Ukraine war and how the Democrat left wants to end the Constitution and create a new one, I think it fitting to talk about who these people are because they are atheists and they reside in our cities that have become citadels of atheism, and the consequences are dire, as they have all been under Democrat control for nearly 50 years. They are decaying and crime is through the roof. But the left doesn't care. But here's the warning about atheists and for atheists. There is a direct connection between communism and atheism. And when you're an atheist, basically you're making up your own moral code. And that's dangerous. Here are the last words of leftist atheists as they laid on their deathbed. Thomas Paine, who was the leading atheistic writer in the American colonies, in his last breaths stated, and I'm quoting him, "O Lord, help me. O God, what have I done? What will become of me hereafter? I would give worlds if I had them. Had the Age of Reason never been published. O Lord, help me. Christ, help me. I'm on the edge of hell here alone. If ever the devil had an agent, I have been that one." This is what much of the Democrat left is today and will face in their final hours. God was creating a perfect place for them when he created hell. After all, without hell, think about this, there is no ultimate justice. Here's another famous last words from Sir Thomas Scott. "Until this moment, I thought there was neither a God nor a hell. Now I know and feel that there are both. and I am doomed to perdition by the just judgment of the Almighty. Think about this. These are last words of these famous atheists on their deathbed. And all of a sudden, they're seeing the horror now that they're facing and the lie that they lived. Here's another last word from one of the famous anti-Christian atheists, Voltaire. I have swallowed nothing but smoke. I have intoxicated myself with the incense that turned my head. I am abandoned by God and man. And at the end, as he said to his doctor, I will give you half of what I am worth if you will give me 6 months of life. But when he was told that was not possible, he said, then I shall die and go to hell. And on his deathbed, famed atheist David Hume exhorted, I am in flames. Then there is Anton Levy, author of the Satanic Bible. At his death, he stated, oh my, what have I done? There's something very wrong. There is something very wrong. And then there is this from King Charles IX, who persecuted my ancestry, by the way. Upon his deathbed, he said, asleep or awake, I see the mangled forms of the Huguenots passing before me. They dropped with blood. They pointed at their open wounds. Oh, that I had spared at least the little infant at the bosom. I not know where I am. How will all of this end? What shall I do? I am lost forever. I know it. Oh, I have done wrong. Much of my writings and podcasts are designed to point the finger to the corrupt, godless, atheistic leadership in this country and around the world to let them know that there is a consequence to how you live your life. All of what they think that they have gained in their quest for ultimate power and world domination will come to an end, as it did with these famous persons that I've just quoted. And they brought a lot of misery based upon their worldview and their atheism, which is part and parcel with communism and authoritarianism. They know they did wrong as they were doing it, and just as do the Democrat left knows today. They know the truth, although they deny it. They will know it on that day when it is too late. And I cannot imagine the horror at that moment when they are about to embark upon that for eternity. But what does that do for all the people that they murdered and killed and all the people that suffered under their psychopathic philosophies? Perhaps more of us, when we go to vote, and particularly those who have sold their souls to the devil for power and manipulate people with lies, should consider that there will be a consequence to their decisions. Now, many will reject the warning in the moment and strike a brave pose before you. But that doesn't do them any good at night when they lay their heads down on that pillow and it's dark in their room. So what does this accomplish, you say? First of all, they can't say they weren't warned, and it is your duty to warn. Secondly, they just might have a change of heart and stop doing the wrong that they're doing. And third, it increases their anxiety as they do wrong and hopefully nullifies its effects. Moreover, it will glorify God on the day he passes judgment upon them, and they will have no excuse. But here's the most important point, and that will be to those who think themselves saved yet shrink from the opportunity to call out the corrupt when they could. Their fate may be no better than those who are finding out too late the cost of what they have done. Now, here's another thread on that same garment. Have you ever asked yourself the question of why the Democrat left doesn't want to control crime in all the major cities in this country that they have controlled for nearly 50 years? Well, that makes them like criminals, doesn't it? Because criminals don't want crime control either. For years and years, common sense people have been screaming to the world about the corruption of the left and in this country, the Democrat left. They are caught daily in their lies, and in every election cycle, it is always the Democrat left that cheats, and they resist any attempt at legislation that would guarantee the integrity of elections. This country has been warned about the dangers the left poses to your life, liberty, and happiness. And when I say life, I literally mean it. The left appoints like-minded judges who let criminals off and then punish the victims. It is happening in the federal courts all across this country and at the state level. Just recently in Louisville, Kentucky, which made national headlines, a serial robber who had been convicted and sentenced to 14 years in jail was released after only serving 5 months by a black Democrat judge appointed by a Democrat governor. Go figure. And immediately upon being released, he invaded a home and kidnapped a woman and her 2 children, made her drive to her bank, withdraw all of her money, and then he stabbed her. There's got to be justice, and it might just need to start with the judges and the prosecutors. Nevertheless, just recently, 2 federal judges appointed by Obama and Biden refused to jail a man who threatened to kill the president, the attorney general, and the president's chief of staff. This very same man had multiple assault convictions prior to his latest threat and a half-dozen probation violations. Yet these Democrat-appointed judges release this man who lacks the ability to control his aggression. This is happening all over the country with Democrat left judges. As psychological studies have confirmed, the liberal and the radical left have a psychological problem. They have an authoritarian character that cannot and will not tolerate any dissent from their opinions or viewpoints. Recent polling has shown that the Republicans are favored insofar as managing crime by 16 points over the Democrats. As we have recently seen after President Trump federalized the Washington, D.C. police and called in 800 National Guard troops to deal with the rampant crime, the Democrats complained again and called him a dictator. In just the first week, citizens are praising him and telling Trump that for the first time in 4 years, they feel safe to go out and have dinner at a restaurant. When recently surveyed, 91% of the residents of D.C. said that the crime in D.C. was terrible and that the people were afraid. Yet the Democrats were telling you that crime was down. But they didn't tell you that crime was down from a peak and not at a level where it is really acceptable, as if crime is acceptable at any level. They are putting people's lives at risk all across the country, and you must fight this scourge with everything that you've got. Now remember this, every major city in this country is not only collapsing, but it is ridden with crime, and on average, the Democrat left has been in total control of those cities for the last 50 years. And you have to hold these judges accountable and demand their removal when they do the sorts of things that we recently experienced here in Louisville, or as just happened in Rhode Island where the judge let that guy off who threatened the president, and he let him go free. The real threat to this country is not the criminal on the street, but the criminal Democrat left and our legislators and those wearing the black robes. Don't be the next victim. Demand the removal of corrupt politicians and judges immediately. Okay, well now you have more information with which to analyze recent news stories. So that'll do it for today, but thanks for joining us. I'm Jack Richardson for Jack's Corner.